Hello everyone. What a timing to have this conference on forced displacement and urban management. Congratulations to the organizers to recognize that migrants and displaced people concentrate in cities, sometimes in transit, but more often for the long term. That migrants and local communities are often segregated, and that local governments are poorly equipped to manage cities in the midst of a displacement crisis, very often not of their own making. Thank you for having UN Habitat in this opening segment. I'm Bruno Derkon of its Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific in Fukuoka, Japan. And really congrats to the organizers for framing the discussions of today and in the coming days in the context of the new urban agenda and the right to the city. The new urban agenda stands for the realization that national developments needs the prosperity that can be derived from increasing urbanization and that inclusion and social cohesion are fundamental to sustainable urban development. All inhabitants must have fair access to resources and opportunities. All must have political agency, and that includes all migrant groups and refugees. We have learned in international development that voluntary return is rare and difficult. Restitution in cases of forced displacement is often complex and it clashes with the even greater complexities of so-called root causes. UN Habitat and its partners refer to urban displacement as a matter where we need to reach out to the communities that have been displaced and live in urban centers and cities. It is the displacement from anywhere to cities. We've also learned that building back better starts not in sectoral humanitarian assistance in the case of cities, not so much with a focus on beneficiaries, but it needs the social compacts of inclusive communities, the economic opportunities of cities, and the full and unbiased support of local governments. Recently, UN Habitat worked with the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on internal displacement. With partners, we strongly argued for a reconceptualization of IDP movements to urban areas. So let me reiterate the observations and findings that were tabled. In responses to forced displacement to cities, the focus remains now mostly on the impact on individuals and not on the impact on urban systems. With the wrong focus, cities are faced by crisis and can become cities in crisis. With the right focus, cities should be made more resilient and turn challenges into opportunities. Building back better during and after the pandemic, for instance, is always an opportunity. For instance, for digital inclusion, for better health and income insurance, and for a greener and healthier economy. But likewise, migration crises bring these opportunities. Opportunities to tackle inequalities, the injustices of sustained informality, and that for all inhabitants. Furthermore, a lot of responses to forced displacement to cities remain piecemeal and project-based. Many development actors don't want to face up to the complexities of urban governance structures. They hang on sectors, on individualized responses and technical solutions. They eschew to acknowledge the local political and governance context. Yes, it is perhaps fragile, but we have to work in such contexts. Responses should not drive alienation. It's important to strengthen municipal delivery systems, apply cross-sectoral and inclusive settlement-based approaches, which benefit both migrants and the urban poor. Municipal actors, municipal planning, municipal finance are crucial dimensions to seek sustainable outcomes for migrant communities. 4 recommendations were made to the Secretary General's high-level panel on internal displacement. First, for a new thinking about urban migrants and local level dynamics. As I said earlier, that is about migrants as citizens in cities, about inclusion, participation, about migrants who contribute to urban development, about innovation in service delivery to both migrants and the urban poor, about working with local governments and municipal service providers. The second recommendation is for tailored capacity building and technical assistance to municipal authorities through all humanitarian development and peace-building programming. That is about, and I quote a report, integrating the response to IDPs into inclusive local development plans, developing city-level durable solution strategies covering the full spectrum of possible solutions, or amending laws and policies that prevent IDPs from enjoying their rights in the city. And it's about collaborating with local governments on data collection and analysis that can catalyze change in their attitudes, countering misconceptions on internal displacement, and helping aligning competing agendas. The third and fourth recommendations are about international finance modalities and the humanitarian aid architecture, which should better address the complicated and fluid contexts of urban displacement crisis. I gladly refer all to the 2021 submission of UN Habitat, the Joint IDP Profiling Service, and IIED on internal displacement in an increasingly urbanizing world, where you can read the recommendations in full. So, how to better support local governments and municipal authorities to respond comprehensively to displacement in their cities? For this purpose, IOM and UN Habitat, with EU support, recently published a new toolkit. We are now testing it in several countries. The toolkit, under the title Integrating Migration into Urban Development, will be fully launched early next year, but it is already available on IOM's website. Everybody in this conference, please have a look, and we welcome feedback or more testing. The toolkit has 11 sections with questionnaires to take development actors who want to do a project on migration to do so with local governments and other local stakeholders. In the first 3 tools, the key questions are asked about the dimensions of the migration problems and the needs for new thinking and new, more sustainable approaches. The policy checklist is the main tool. IOM and UN Habitat focus here first on questions about urban legislation and governance, and that compasses all areas of social and economic policy, including, for instance, health and education. Then we zoom in on issues of urban planning, housing, basic services, jobs, and municipal finance. Finally, we focus on urban resilience and multi-hazard risk to migrants and cities, as so often cities face crisis upon crisis. So what kind of issues come up? I list a few. There are questions about laws and bylaws and their implementation undermining the rights and protections of migrants and displaced persons. About policy and planning frameworks not counting in migrants and becoming adamantly exclusionary and detrimental to social cohesion. Or simply questions about ignorance or unintentional bias vis-à-vis migrants and status quo arrangements leaving migrants and migrations boxed in as a humanitarian response matter and no more. There are questions about urban planning processes in relation to housing and slum upgrading, and policies where data or statutory processes do not count in migrants and the places where they live. Other issues are about unethical recruitment or poor working conditions for migrant workers, who often have even less voice than informal workers. and also questions about migrants living in hazard zones in cities who do not have inclusion in the disaster risk reduction programs of cities, or are vulnerable to being left behind, or even vulnerable to human trafficking and other forms of exploitation at times of disasters. Working with municipalities and migrant communities is always difficult. In 2010, I supported a program in Pakistan promoting joint community development of Afghan refugees and Pakistani host communities. Sustainability at grassroots levels was actually not that difficult. The real difference comes when local governments need to count in migrant communities. UN Habitat and its partners developed cheap tools to record what we call the social domain tenure of cohabiting communities. It is the local understanding of how land and other resources are shared. These records and these maps can be used by municipalities. For instance, in Nepal, a mayor used social domain records to allocate COVID-19 assistance. In Afghanistan, this information has been used in recent years to create a local level property tax that pays for local services in cities. And this property tax is coming from both citizens and migrants and returnees, irrespective of their ID status. This intervention then always requires capacity building, and that is never short term. In Kupang 10 years ago, I found that in order for the local government to trust the squatting ex-combatant families for Timor-Leste, they had first to trust themselves. The perception had been for years that Jakarta was responsible for the repercussion of the independence of Timor-Leste. We worked then with district governments, showing that they could build multi-stakeholder alliances themselves, and that they could encourage and oversee participatory mapping. But that required them to show that they were also endeavoring progress for all, for instance with regard to water and sanitation programming and women participation. The turnaround was to create a belief that local governments could deal with migrants and peace building themselves, and that their appeals for development assistance from Jakarta should be about development for all. In the same vein, UN Habitat has worked now for more than 10 years with Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. In 2010, rural migrants were a threat to orderly urban development. Now, the threat is climate change, water scarcity, and flash floods, and these are threats to all. This requires citywide adaptation and flood protection, and that is only doable making use of the adaptive capacity of all communities, including those erstwhile rural settlers now living in less dense areas of the capital. Seeing migrant communities no longer as a problem, but as part of a solution for sustainable urban development for all. That is tangible progress. I look forward to more ideas for tangible progress in collaboration with migrant communities to come out from your conference.